What's up? You're listening to the Sports Court. I am Gregory Beatty alongside Eddie Cox in the building on this humid fall day. Who says you can't wear white after Labor Day, man? That doesn't apply in Houston, Texas. They're talking about shoes, of course, and even then it really doesn't apply. Of course, we make our own rules in that regard. Hey, well, we're happy to be here. Grade A Media, Grade A Radio, Skrilla's in the building. I'm Greg, that's Eddie. We are here, the Sports Court. Eddie, what is up, my friend? We had a lot going on this past weekend in the sports world, of course, the NFL, opening weekend of the NFL, of course. But you have a lot more going on. Of course, college football. UT had a barn burner against Bama. Should have won that game. We'll talk about that. A&M took a L. Frama Valdez of the Astros balling out of control, doing what he does. So, of course, we know the baseball playoffs are very near and dear to our heart. The Cowboys, we will talk about them. Hey, Cowboys fans, it's done data. It is done data. But a few tidbits right quick before we get going, actually. Eddie Cox is in the building, like I said. I'm Greg. I'm Gregory Beatty. Like I said, the Sports Court, the show where we keep it 100% of the time. Hey, you got Eddie. Also, real quick, before we get started, I just found out that Anthony Joshua, now he signed on to fight Tyson Fury, so now Tyson Fury is going to come out of retirement. I hate when boxers do that. Now, of course, that's going to be a good heavyweight bout, of course, but that's about 3 years. That should have been done like about 3 years ago. Now Tyson Fury is coming out of retirement, and now he's going to fight December the 3rd, I think that fight is.
You know, that's common in boxing.
It is.
I felt the same way about the Pacquiao-Mayweather fight. Mm-hmm. Like, here's a fight that should have happened years ago until you wait till Pacquiao's already, way on the downhill of his career. And it's not the same. It takes for promotional issues, it takes matches like that forever to get put together.
Right on.
But to sort of tie that to the NFL, I don't know if you heard Le'Veon Bell TKO'd Adrian Peterson.
What? Did he really?
That he did.
Wait. Is it rolling? We're rolling.
We're like your mic was unplugged.
Yeah. Hey, man, we're moving so much in here, trying to get rolling. We come in here and get set up and stuff. Sometimes it takes a minute. We're both coming from different areas of town, doing what we do. So, hey, we're here. Glad to be here. But, hey, I agree with you about the fighters, man. That's what happens usually. It's always a year or 2, 3 years too late, like you were saying about Pacquiao and Mayweather. But that's what happens. So Anthony Joshua is getting ready to fight
and don't forget,
Tyson Fury.
Le'Veon Bell knocked
out Adrian Peterson.
Well, TKO.
Really?
TKO. But
what round?
You know what's funny? I don't remember what round. I just saw.
It doesn't matter. He knocked him out. Huh?
I didn't see the fight. I saw the result.
Okay.
But I'll tell you this. Just like going into it, I know Le'Veon was a beast. Adrian obviously was AP
right on
when they played. But I thought Adrian Peterson would have whipped his ass, man. I really do.
Well, he's a workout warrior.
You think about it,
But can you take a punch?
Man,
obviously not. Hey, you know what? Like Mike Tyson once said, everybody has a plan until they get hit. And that's actually what happened with Adrian Peterson. But see, those guys are competitors. They're very competitive, and they want to keep competing at a high level, even if it's not in the NFL. And again, they better be careful in that regard, because when it comes to brain injuries and things like that, that's something that's very real. And the more blows you continue to take in boxing, that's just going to add to what you already have accumulated on the football field. We know Adrian Peterson and Le'Veon Bell, even though Le'Veon Bell was more elusive, didn't really take a lot of head-on shots. The fact of the matter is he played running back in the NFL, and we know how violent Adrian Peterson was. So we'll see if that trend continues with AP. Is he going to continue to box, or maybe is that something that's a one-off?
As those fights are tied to really large sums, then I think definitely these guys will continue to do that. True. We saw Greg Hardy do the same thing, go from a football career to, to a career in mixed martial arts, short, albeit, but still. It's something that these guys are going to continue to do, and they draw. Somebody who you're familiar with.
Absolutely.
The casual fight fan, it's going to draw, and that's what they're looking to do: get eyes on the screen, and those guys will do that, especially for the lower level MMA organizations.
That's true, man. Hey, that is true. And a couple other tidbits. Now we hadn't talked. Hey, you listen to the Sports Court once again. I'm Greg. That's Eddie. We'll be here for the next couple of hours talking everything NFL, college football. As far as basketball is concerned, not too much going on. I know the last time we were in here, we didn't mention the fact that Patrick Beverley has signed with the Los Angeles Lakers. So I think that's a shrewd move by the Los Angeles Lakers, like I like to say. I think that was a very Patrick Beverley, even though the Lakers need shooting, but what he's going to do, even though technically he's touted as a pretty good three-point shooter, spot-up three-point shooter if you pass him the ball, but he's a guy that, of course, the Lakers, now he's going to be paired with Russell Westbrook, and we know the history that those two have together. But the thing about it is, with Patrick Beverley, you know he's going to give you that toughness. You know he's going to give you that toughness on defense, that defensive intensity. He's not going to be scared to get in LeBron's face for the most part. And pretty much he's a guy that's going to be a leader. He's going to lead by example, and he's going to hold people accountable. And he's a guy that doesn't need the basketball. But as far as that tenacity, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and then he's a guy that's not ball dominant, so LeBron can still do his thing, can kick it out to Beverly. So I think he's an added addition, even with Westbrook. I think he's somebody as far as mentality-wise. And then if you need someone to handle the ball, of course, he's a point guard. So if you need someone to handle the ball, he's that secondary option that can actually maybe help you out in pick and rolls, then can attack the basket from time to time, but can hit some timely threes. But more so than anything, his nickname used to be Mr. 94 feet. So, hey, if you look at it like that, he's not Mr. 94 feet anymore, meaning he's not that tenacious defender all the way up the floor, but he can still give you some timely stops and really give you that grit on the defensive side of the ball, and just as a team.
Grasping at straws. That's what I call this.
Okay.
The Lakers are grasping at straws. This is a very thin line of
not
lipstick
a great three-point shooter
on a fat, obese, abhorrent-smelling pig, okay? I think the Lakers are going to miss the playoffs again. If I was LeBron James, I would have figured out a way to move on from the Lakers, wherever you got to go, and just pick up somewhere else, try it again, because they have reached the peak of what they have as far as capital to gain assets. Mm-hmm. Players like Patrick Beverley are going to be the only guys they're going to be able to bring in, for the foreseeable future with LeBron being there.
But that's just a piece.
I just don't.
He's a role player for sure.
But you get what I'm saying. They
I
can't,
get exactly what you're
can't
saying.
go make a splash, without
they
trading
need somebody like Buddy
Anthony
Hill.
Davis or LeBron James.
Right.
And they don't seem to be willing to do that. And I just don't see this team being able to put together the type of intense playoff type of basketball, play games that. We saw it last season. I mean, I expect to see the exact same thing I saw last season.
Well, you know what?
Maybe
and I don't necessarily
some stuff together if Anthony Davis stays healthy.
Well, that's it. And I don't necessarily disagree.
If he does,
I still don't think they're a championship
team. To me, it's
team.
not a playoff team.
No, I definitely don't think they're a championship team. I still think Golden State is the favorites right there, and a plethora of other teams before the Lakers, even though the Lakers have LeBron James.
The main reason
but I just think Pat Beverley is a nice added addition, but that's not. He's not what they needed to get them over the hump as far as the championship.
It's going to get. I mean, I don't see them being able to bring in a better name. And the big reason why I think they won't make the playoffs
somebody with attitude
is because midway through the season, when they're not, they're not winning like they think that they should be. These players are going to start to pack it in like they did last year. And they're going to start looking to their future because these guys are old, a lot of them are old timers. They're running out of time. Even Anthony Davis, he's running out of time. I mean, we don't know how many good years of basketball he has left. He's one
to stay healthy.
He's one big leg injury away from him always being a question mark. You know? So he needs to get in a situation where he's got a chance to get another NBA championship, a championship that's not tied to a bubble. Mm-hmm. I know he wants that, and I know LeBron James still wants to be able to play all the way up until when Bronny comes into the league. If he's going to do that, he's going to need to have some years that are like less stress years, and I don't see anything but stress ahead for the LA Lakers.
Hey, you know what? I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you in that regard. I'm just saying Pat Beverley added to that team, I think is going to help, even though I don't think that's the guy that's going to get them over the hump.
I mean, I can carry coolers.
But check it
I
out.
can pass out
I know that's
jerseys,
cute, but check it out. Check it out.
I can help.
He's not a superstar player, but it's interesting that now he's paired with Russell Westbrook. So you really haven't addressed your shooting issues. So what you're saying in the grand scheme of things as far as their chances, I agree. I don't think he's the guy that gets them over the hump. But of course, at this point, it's obvious they're not going to make any more moves. As far as Anthony Davis, of course they want to see if they can run it back with LeBron James and a healthy Anthony Davis. And we all know everything hinges on Anthony Davis's health. A lot of people still think he's a top 5 player in this league when he's healthy. But like we're saying, when is he ever healthy? So I'm not up here proclaiming the Lakers as a championship contender, but I tell you what, the addition of Patrick Beverley is going to be very interesting to see how he helps them, at least on the defensive side of the ball. And even though he's not the defender that he once was, but he's just an added addition. I just thought I would bring that up. And it's the Phoenix Suns, their owner, he's suspended for 10 games. Well, suspended for a season, actually for a full year for improper conduct. What did he have going on? An independent investigation involving more than 80,000 documents of materials, Eddie, and interviews with 320 people, including current and former employees. So the NBA said Robert Sarver engaged in conduct that clearly violated common workplace standards and has been ordered to attend a training program focused on respect and appropriate conduct in the workplace. And so he's suspended for a year and fined $10 million. And that $10 million is supposed to go to three different charities. So he's gone for making inappropriate comments and doing things that he's not supposed to do in the workplace, but we don't want to spend too much time on that. But these owners need to watch themselves because everything is hitting the fan at some point, and that's exactly what's happening in Phoenix. He's also the owner of the Phoenix Mercury, Eddie. Hey, man, but you know what? Enough about basketball. We'll see what Pat Beverley does. I hate the fact Chet Holmgren, you said you were concerned about his injury history. I hate the fact that he's a very fluke injury. We didn't talk about that last week. I hate the fact he's going to miss a full season out there trying to get better, trying to compete, and that was just a fluke injury. So Oklahoma City, even though they look very promising in the future, they're going to be without him, at least for next season. And we'll see with the Rockets and their first-round draft pick, who a lot of people are not very high on, even though he's projected to go first pick in the draft by all accounts. A lot of people are still saying that he's probably not going to win Rookie of the Year, this and that. So we shall see. But that's enough about basketball right now, unless there's anything else you want to add. But I want to get into some football, man.
No, the premier matchup this weekend was Texas and Alabama, as former colleagues and now foes, got together. And, I think that even though there were high hopes, if you're a Texas fan, maybe you could have expected this. But I don't think anybody really expected Texas to come out there and play as tough against Alabama as they did, and especially as well on defense as they did. And I got to be honest with you, Greg, if Quinn Ewers doesn't go out in that game, I think Texas wins easily.
Hey, you know what? Well, I'm not going to say they wins easily. But I tell you what, Quinn Ewers, and one thing about it, folks, and you've heard me sing the praises.
I just don't think Alabama would have been in a position where they could line up and kick a game-winning field goal. Let's just put it that way.
Okay. Well, I'll say this: the loss of Quinn Ewers was huge because what he showed in the first quarter of that game and we've talked about it. You've heard me talk about it for the last couple of years, even when he was at Ohio State, and about his prospects and future prospects. And I said, you've heard me say on this show a number of times, even when Arch Manning signed with UT, I said, let's see how Quinn Ewers looks and how he does. We know these NIL deals and things they have going on off the field. I know Sark is a great recruiter. And Manning, sounds good with UT. But if Quinn Ewers, if he wouldn't have got hurt in that game and he ultimately did what I said what was possible, if he lived up to the hype and ended up being a Heisman type of candidate, if Arch Manning, and if he comes back in 4 games, so that's still good news that he's only out for 4 games because I didn't know if that was a season injury or what. But the fact of the matter is, if he gets back into the fold and he looks like the guy that we saw in that first half, if Arch wants to play his freshman year, if you want to be one of those guys like your brother, like your dad, your uncle, and your uncle, and Peyton and Eli, if you want to be those guys and play as a true freshman, you might want to rethink things because that's how legitimate Quinn Ewers looked early on in that game. I'm talking about it. I'll say it. And I don't throw this word around lightly. Eddie, to me, and me and my boy Selwyn was texting. We texted a few times, and we both agreed was like, and Sel played in the NFL, and he's been on the show a number of times. And we both agreed. I said, hey, bro, he's special. He's special. Just the way he's flicking that ball around, his command, his arrogance on the field, his cockiness. I like the way he could spin it. He could make every throw. And to your point, it was going to be a ball game, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing that it probably wouldn't have come down to but you never know how the game would have played out.
Yeah,
but the way it was playing out, with your boy, the way he was calling those plays and the way he was tossing that ball around, that was a huge blow to UT. So to further the point,
gap between it was obvious between him and Hudson Card, and this is why when we talked about last week when he decided to transfer, don't wait around for your boy out of Ohio State for Stroud to leave, for C.J. Stroud to leave. Go play somewhere right now and show why you made that decision. And clearly it's because he's ready to play.
Absolutely.
And it's not even close.
I said he's gone. Hey, and I'll tell you this, UT, and even though if it's one game when you actually want to say, what was Quinn Ewers? I mean, okay, hurt in the first quarter. But, hey, the Tide have won 54 straight games against non-conference opponents. So, even though that game was at 11, you have a lot of people saying, well, Alabama, they were sleepwalking early on, blah, 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 blah. I tell you what, I don't know if that was the case or not, but I really know that UT, they came out there ready to play, and that's a victory right there that even though they ended up losing, and you can look at it as, okay, that's a moral victory, but I don't necessarily look at it like that in the sense – I mean, I like what they showed. Now, if they can build off of this, again, I hate the fact that Quinn Ewers got injured because if you would have been able to win that game, which it looked like they were going to do even without Quinn Ewers, even with a hobbled backup quarterback, it looks like they still were probably going to win that game if it wasn't for – but again, who was the strength and conditioning coach? They ran out of gas in the fourth quarter, and I'll tell you what. If Quinn Ewers would have stayed in that game, it would have been Bijan Robinson in that run game. You're playing with a brand new offensive line, 2 brand new left tackles. But the energy that UT came up with.
2 brand new left tackles, that's a new one. 2 brand new tackles.
2 brand new tackles.
They're lining up.
You got it right there. Yeah. Hey, teamwork made the dream work. Hey, but two new tackles, true freshmen, and Xavier Worthy. I've told y'all, here's the real deal. So, my point is, if UT could have won that game, even though they still got into the top 25 and they're 21 now because of that, the way they played the number 1 team in the land, I look at it like this. They probably could have vaulted themselves up to the top 12 or top 10 and really had a chance for a special season. And I think even that victory, that momentum would have propelled them even with that injury. And they still may win the next few games and hold it down until Quinn Ewers comes back.
We've learned over the years that that those near misses or those near wins for teams that are underdogs or who are not expected to win when they're playing the elite across the college football landscape in the country, that those go a long way with the voters when you get to the end of the season. And if you're sitting there near the end of the season, you got an opportunity to play in your last couple of games, win your last couple of games, and the only loss on your slate is to Alabama, then you know that you're going to get a,
they're going to win the Big 12.
I'm just saying, like, whether that's the first step is winning the Big 12.
It's going to look good on the resume.
But losing this game to Alabama doesn't hurt your playoff your playoff resume this early in the season. And as a matter of fact, people are going to look back on that if you continue to show growth and play better football and string together a bunch of wins. They're going to look back on that and say, hey,
that was a stepping stone.
Maybe they lost their quarterback. Now, without Quinn Ewers, it's going to be a tough sledding for the next month or so. But Absolutely. If they can get through that without another loss and squeak by, on the legs of Bijan Robinson and the arm of Hudson Card.
Well, I think it's the best running back in the nation.
Then all of a sudden, now they've got an opportunity to go out there, and we may get to see the burnt orange.
Okay. Well, that's just
a playoff push, something we have not seen them even be talked about doing ever since.
And I agree with that. If they win out, and that's why I said if they can hold down the fort and they don't lose any more games, of course, that early season loss to Bama is not going to hurt them. But if they win that, they can set themselves up better. And I think psychologically, too, they set themselves up better for more success, even moving forward without Quinn Ewers. I just think even for the fan base, that loss, it was kind of a crushing blow because they were so fired up to see UT. Okay, which UT? I think it's a bag of mixed emotions. I think they feel good about the prospects. Again, they need to stay strong in the fourth quarter. But Bama is a different beast. I'll see how they played the rest of the season as far as that's concerned. But we know how many games they lost last season in the fourth quarter. And then as far as how much it would have helped in recruiting, I mean, you beat Bama, the number 1 team in the nation, just that national prestige right now. I just think a victory right there would have propelled them and done so much more to get them back on par, at least in the media's eyes, with what they were, even when Vince Young was there. And even though they still may be on that trajectory. But I just think that was a tough loss. But you know what happened was when they left that time for Bryce Young on the clock, And I said that about Bijan Robinson. He didn't have a great game, but I just love the way he runs, man. I mean, he's a guy that I'm really looking forward to watching in the NFL. I'm talking about I love his body lean. I love his feet. He's quick, great vision. I'm always leaning forward. You never get a clean hit on him. I mean, Bijan Robinson, I know he didn't do a lot in that game, but you put him in the NFL catching the ball out of the backfield and doing some things. I'm talking about, you say you don't need a running back in the first round. That's a top 10 talent, folks. Let's just call it what it is right there. It was
just nice to see, Texas finally, after all these years, show up ready to play, come out of the gate against an opponent that you know that you cannot rest on your laurels with, and get out there and have a good start, have a fast start. If this game was 4 years ago, we're talking about Texas being blown out in the first half.
Right.
And they're not even going to be anywhere near have the ability to hang with Alabama. But now, just even though you say there's no moral victories, you look and you can see, hey, now this is going to be a team that's getting prepped and ready to make a move to the SEC, and is going to play that type of football. And this stuff about sleepwalking, Alabama doesn't sleepwalk through the first weeks. Okay, even when they play inferior opponents, they don't sleepwalk. They might go have a tough first series.
Well, they had a lot of penalties.
It was
touchdown. Kind of uncharacteristic.
I've just seen, I'm watching them for many years. They do not do what Ohio State does sometimes.
Yeah, they do. I agree with that. Well, I'll tell you this.
For whatever reason.
No, I got you. And then speaking of my Buckeyes, played Arkansas State this past weekend. When I tell you about Marvin Harrison Jr., and that wasn't some major revelation, but if you're not paying attention, like I said last week, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be special. Caught 3 touchdown passes last week, over 100 and something yards. So they connected. They got the ball downfield. Jackson Smith and Jigba, he will be back this week, so they're going to have that full complement of players. Again, it was against Arkansas State. They did what they were supposed to do, ran the ball, did some things, but I love what they're going to look like moving forward with that passing game and with Travion Henderson in the backfield. And the defense, if they can stay strong and stay sturdy and really, really quit giving up the big plays like they were doing in that first game, or in the first half of last game, and then we'll see. But the Buckeyes, they handle their business. But again, UT, I love what they were able to do. Now, as far as Bama, before we move on and keep it moving, of course, we have a lot of NFL to talk about, so stay tuned for that. You listen to the Sports Court. I'm Greg, that's Eddie. Bryce Young. Now, I know I said Anthony Richardson last week was the first pick. I was going off sheer talent, and I really didn't think that one out like I should have. I was going like, okay, I know I call it a lot where I can call it out and speak like, hey, this is a number 2 pick, like I did about Chase Young, and like I went on and on and on. I can go on about players who I was like, they're going to be picked right here, and they're going to be great, yada, yada, yada. And then there have been some misses too. But Anthony Richardson, after the second game, not ready because mentally, I'm going to tell you what, Bryce Young, last year's Heisman Trophy, I love C.J. Stroud. I still want to see how Anthony Richardson looks throughout the season, if he gets smarter and more cerebral as a quarterback. And that's going to come with time, playing more. He's really now just starting to play. So some of the mistakes that he made last game, he probably won't be apt to make moving forward. But Bryce Young, when I said they gave Bryce Young too much time, now they had him stymied for most of the game, and then he woke up, and he puts me in the mind of Russell Wilson to a degree. We'll talk about the Seahawks game here in a second and Russell Wilson's return. But Bryce Young is special. Bryce Young is special. I don't care what he is, 6 foot, 195 or whatever, but the way he plays the game, his competitive nature, his competitive spirit, he just put that team on his back. And, of course, the defense made some plays. Quinn Ewers, when he got injured, I'm not going to say that was a dirty play, but the way Quinn Ewers was playing, that defensive end who put him out the game, he knew he had to get Quinn Ewers out that game. So when he was driving him down to the ground, he was saying to himself, if I don't get this guy out the game, we might lose this game like you're saying. So that's how good Texas looked. On the defensive side of the ball, they looked strong. They were flying around. They were fast. I mean, they just kind of ran out of gas, and Bama is one of those teams. Bama is one of those teams, you know how. Now, of course, Georgia's ranked number 1 right now. But Bama is top dog, man, until somebody. Now, Georgia won the national championship last year. But Bama, they just don't lose. They just don't lose to non-conference opponents. And that was the opportunity right there. But Bama is one of them teams, like, you could be talking all kinds of noise. And this goes for Ohio State, too. When Bama whooped up on them the other year. You could be talking all kinds of shit. You know how you somewhere, you talking all kinds of noise. What? Blah, 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 blah. And then somebody tap you on your shoulder, and you look back, and oh, and it's somebody like Shaq or somebody, you'd be like, oh, Shaq, my bad, man. You know, hey, man, shit, they tripping over here, bro. They tripping. But Bama is one of those teams. It's like, okay, this is Bama. This is Bama. So we'll see what they do moving forward. Now, they don't have the weapons on the outside that they once did, but Bryce Young is a guy that can get the job done, and I really think he can be special on that next level. But
it seems like more often
can scramble.
No, well, not just this pertains to Bryce Young, but it doesn't have to do with him specifically. But I think with Bill O'Brien, their offense seems to sputter more than it has in the past. Even with all that talent that they have, talent at quarterback,
I like the
they
running back.
Still seem to sputter here and there and go through these spells where they don't score points. Spells that Texans fans like me or people who live in the city here like Greg are all too familiar with.
Right.
Now, in spite of all that, rumors are that Bill O'Brien is at the top of the list to become Nebraska's next head coach.
Scott Frost out of there. We talked about it. I brought it up a few weeks ago.
With Scott Frost being fired.
Yeah, fired.
And speaking of, well, it's just interesting, that little tidbit, because I don't think he's done great at Alabama. Even though they've had success, I think that has more to do with just the sheer talent.
Okay.
I mean,
because I was going to counter that with.
Give me a headset. I'll go out there and I'll run 7 plays like Mike Leach.
Last year, and he had the Heisman Trophy winner. Was it the year before that? Who won the Heisman the year before that? You had Bryce Young last season. Then you had Jameson Williams, who's in Detroit now. He didn't win the Heisman Trophy, but who won the year before Bryce Young? Was it somebody else from Bama? Well, I know Bryce won. Bryce Young won it last year, and then he had a big-time receiver. But that goes to your point about the talent. So you think it's more about the talent than the scheme, because even before that, you can look at guys like Jerry Jeudy and on and on and on.
The thing about it is with Alabama is they have their offense. You know, Bill O'Brien goes in there. You ask – I've seen several interviews with Nick Saban where he talks about, you know, coaches come in here and they think they're going to bring their entire system. You know, we're going to run our system. So Alabama already has an offensive system. Bill O'Brien went in there. He was the one learning the playbook, not the players. Those guys already know everything. You know, all 120 of them or however many guys are on their roster. They already know that. So Bill O'Brien wasn't changing anything. It's just still – it's a little bit surprising. You would think with some fresh ideas that maybe they may be experiencing more success. But I just think some of the deficiencies of Bill O'Brien as a play caller and as an overall schemer of a game throughout the game, when it comes to his play calling, sometimes he's just off the mark and he gets out coached and out called more often than he should. And if he was anywhere else but Alabama, it would probably stick out more. But like Steve Sarkisian, like the guys like Lane Kiffin, like the guys that have come before him, he's definitely put some more sugar on his resume rather than salt now that he had, some of that stank he had when he left the Texans. All that's kind of cleared and gone, and he's going to get another opportunity to be the head man.
And yes,
Whether or not it's Nebraska, I don't know, but somebody's going to come calling, and it's going to be a solid program.
Because you know how they regurgitate those coaches, and they're going to feel that he's learned something coaching under Saban, and that's one thing you have to give Nick Saban credit for. All these guys that get ousted, so to speak, I mean, you look at Bill O'Brien, he gives him a shot. He knows, he gets these guys and he knows what he needs from them to add to his coaching staff. If it's one specific quality that they have, that they bring, he's going to make sure he bring them in and make sure that he adds that quality of coaching to his football team. You look at the opportunity he gave Lane Kiffin. I mean, we can talk about Steve Sarkisian. He was given an opportunity, another opportunity, 2 separate opportunities.
After falling hard.
After falling hard. And Nick Saban, he does that. As great as he is, he gives these guys another opportunity. And then the coach at, I think it's Kentucky, the black coach, but he gives these guys another opportunity, and they take advantage of it. They learn something new under Nick Saban that helps them moving forward, and then they go on and they usually further their career. So it's not crazy what you're saying right there. I can definitely see that happen with Bill O'Brien.
What about A&M? Let me ask you this: you're
Notre Dame.
You're taking the words right out of my mouth. I was just saying, speaking of coaches being fired. We know Jimbo Fisher's not going to get fired, but could there have been a worse start to the A&M season than what they're having so far, and a loss to Appalachian State? This hasn't happened, or a loss like this hasn't happened in as long as I can remember, Greg.
Hey, what did we say? What did we say about Appalachian State last week? Located, I think, in Boone, North Carolina, wherever it is. But they will play anybody. It's almost like the secretary going to the coach's office, the coach at Appalachian State before the season, but like, we got Bama on the phone. They want us, like Dennis Green. He sound like Dennis Green. He probably tell us, schedule their asses. I don't care who it is. Schedule their asses. He is scheduling, he is scheduling everybody and anybody And that's what doesn't look good for A&M. You're talking about Jimbo Fisher. They ranked number 6 coming into offense was putrid. Now, this is his 5th season, Jimbo Fisher. And they lose that second game of the season, but it's usually against someone like Clemson or Alabama. But I tell you this, coming in ranked number 6, the offense was putrid. We talked about Devon Achane. Get him the ball, please. But the offensive line looked poor, no kind of push. And
Which is not typical of
Appalachian State, who gave up 60 points the week before against North Carolina.
If anything, they've always had a good line up front.
Right. And they gave up 60 points against North Carolina, and you score 14. You score 14 and turn the ball. I mean, they just look bad, man. So I don't know what's going on over there.
I'll tell you what,
that's not a good look. That's not a good start.
I'll tell you one thing. King, he's
defense couldn't get stops.
He's not the quarterback.
He's
not the quarterback that this team needs. There's a lot of stuff
handpicked by Jimbo, though.
Because you see why coaches can fall in love with these guys, because they've got so much potential. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of potential there, but clearly his passing game is not polished enough for him to be leading a team that's supposed to take the SEC by storm. Mm-hmm. He's not good enough. And then you think about Max Johnson. Okay, here's a guy that I think he could do some of the game managing things a little bit better. He's more of a traditional quarterback, but if I'm being honest with you right now, Connor Weigman is going to be the saving grace for A&M. The sooner that he gets in there, I think you're going to see some things start happening for A&M. I just don't think they have the quarterback. I don't think Johnson's the guy, and I absolutely don't think that King is the guy.
Yeah, well, they definitely didn't look like it again. A team that had just given up 60 points to North Carolina, and you're the number 6 team in the nation.
You can't beat out that guy and you're Max Johnson, because we know why Weigman isn't playing. He's a true freshman. But we talked about during the spring practices, he's got Jimbo Fisher saying, well, the most consistent guy that we've seen is Weigman. Yeah. And so it's only a matter of time before this guy plays.
So we shall see.
Especially if they keep losing to, Twinkie State and Honey Bun.
Hey, Appalachian State, man, I have to give them credit. They schedule anyone, and they always play them tough. We talked about it last week, and then they went out and showed and proved that not only do they play them tough, they actually got a victory this time against the number 6 team in the nation. And we know the problems that they've been giving everyone else usually when they play them that's ranked in the top 10. So congrats to Appalachian State, and not a good look for A&M. I know that's not the end of the season. It's early. Maybe they can rebound from this and learn from it and actually propel them forward and help them do some things this season and live up to that billing as far as what Jimbo Fisher is expected to do in the SEC. But, hey, enough college football talk right now. Again, I got my Buckeye talk in, talked about Marvin Harrison. Again, I love the way they use him, man. 6'3", 215, but I wanted to see if they would use him as a big play receiver, not a possession receiver, and that's how Ryan Day is using him, using his athleticism and getting him the ball downfield. So I wanted to continue to see what my Buckeyes is able to do moving forward. But moving on to the NFL, man.
I'd have to say that there's 2 big stories I'd say coming out of the NFL this weekend. The number one, as it pertains to here in Houston, and then what the game we saw last night, coaches' decisions are coming under scrutiny.
Oh my God!
Now. And so we're going to get into both of those. But where I want to start here before we talk the Denver Seattle game, as both homecomings for quarterbacks, former quarterbacks and their teams, didn't go the way of the returner. It went the way of the home team, of the old team, I should say, with the Browns and with the Seahawks. But Dak Prescott's going to miss a considerable time of the season. And to me, I think that's the biggest story, because even though that offense didn't look great early on when he was in the game, throughout the first 3 quarters, still there's a lot there. I think they're a lot better than what they showed. And this hurts. This essentially, I know you want to say it's over with. But if I was the Cowboys, I would be calling around to see if there's a way I could pry a, 3rd, 4th tier type of quarterback or a high level backup away from somebody. I'm getting on the phone with a Ryan Fitzpatrick or somebody like that, and trying to get them in there, because I don't know how you feel about the backup quarterback Cooper Rush, but I feel like they're trying to talk themselves into like everything's going to be okay,
and
you can't afford to miss.
Well, let me tell you,
you can't afford to throw away another season on a Dak Prescott injury when you just went through that only a couple seasons ago.
Yeah, hey, well, I'll tell you this, and I was gonna start with the Cowboys, but I didn't want to be selfish in that regard.
No, I mean clearly that's the biggest story in the NFL because it ties to so many other things when you look at the Jimmy Garoppolo situation, the other quarterbacks that are out there that could possibly be traded. All that comes into play because every time one of these guys goes down or a big name like this goes down, especially with the contender, we're gonna hear, well, what assets do they have, and is it worth it to them to take a swing at Jimmy Garoppolo?
Yeah. Hey, well, let's go there first. Then again, I was gonna talk about it here soon. I wanted to get your take on the game last night and the Texans, but we can start right there. That is a big story in the NFL right there. Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, and you've heard me on this show in the last few weeks saying, I just don't see it in the Cowboys. Now, last week I said they should try to establish the run game, which they did okay in the run game. Zeke averaged over 5 yards a carry. What have I always said, though? You talk all that noise during the offseason about how you're going to lean on Ezekiel Elliott. It was 19-3. And you started playing scared after you saw you wasn't moving the ball and you wasn't getting you were not getting anything done in the passing game, and they were squatting on the receivers. The receivers couldn't get open. And you've heard me the last few weeks say, and leading up into the season, I didn't see what the Cowboys did in the offseason to really help their team. If anything, they're losing players and they're not adding anything. So it's not like it's addition by subtraction. It's just subtraction. I mean, you lose one of the best receivers in Amari Cooper, and you don't replace him with anything. You lose Cedric Wilson. You lose Lyle Collins. Of course, we know about the injury to Tyron Smith. So I wasn't high going into the season on the Cowboys anyway because I didn't think Dak Prescott had the weapons around him to really do anything. Now I know it's just game one, and I know it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I still need to see if CD Lamb is a number one receiver. I love his talent. I love his upside. But for some reason, and he drops too many passes. He dropped a crucial third down pass that he should have caught that went through his hands. If you're the number one receiver, you have to make that catch. Everything is not going to be put in your breadbasket for you. You have to make those tough catches. And you can't really count on him. I mean, he will make the catches that you don't expect him to make in a lot of situations. Be like, damn, he made that catch. But then he will drop the ones that you expect him to make, and they will be crucial. They usually halt drives, and they're usually crucial to the game. Whether it's so he needs to really prove that he's the number one. But again, 10 carries for Ezekiel Elliott, and then you have Pollard in there, who I love. Pollard did some nice things too, but I thought they really tried to force it too much with Pollard as far as, okay, we're going to sit Zeke on the bench. And hey, man, you got to find a way to play both of them. I mean, you're paying Zeke all this money, and he has to get more than 10 carries, especially when he's averaging over 5 yards a carry. You have to realize that as a coach, and you have to continue to get him the football, and then that will possibly open things up for your passing game. It's not rocket science, Kellen Moore, but you can't go away from the run like that just because you're playing the Buccaneers and because you have this $40 million quarterback and you don't have the weapons.
They weren't gonna. I don't think they were ever gonna catch the Bucs running the football, and it was nice.
But you have to
it was promising to see that from
some degree.
From Zeke, but the inconsistencies in their passing game just had to do with their timing and the inability of CD Lamb to get open. For whatever reason,
that's why you got to run the ball
he was struggling getting open, and you know that an explosive offense like the Buccaneers, they add a guy like Jones, and they're going to put up some points. And Leonard Fournette, he is a monster.
They're going to lean on him all season.
He wears defenses down, and even though the Cowboys, were able to force some turnovers, they still weren't going to slow them down enough to where Zeke or Pollard were going to be able to carry them to a victory. They needed a good game from Dak, and they needed a good game.
I still think they got away from it too much, though.
From Kellen Moore,
it was 19-3.
CeeDee Lamb, and they didn't get it.
Yeah, and I think there's reasons for that. I think the play calling wasn't good, but the talent on the team, there's only so much you can do, and that's what I was saying last week when you were talking about CD Lamb and the way they should utilize him. But Tampa wasn't. They were not going to give the Cowboys that, knowing they had no one that could threaten them deep.
Well, the biggest issue is, especially if you want to go out there and you want to be a team that establishes the run, I just feel like Dallas is just not who they used to be up front. They are a struggling offensive line.
But you know what, Eddie? I hear you on that.
And that
that's what
defensive line is
say.
good.
Right, but that's what people say. But they were averaging over 5 yards a carry. So the proof is in the pudding is what I'm saying. I mean, we could sit there and make these
proclamations
about
the
how they're going to look. That's the same thing happened last season when you would look up and Zeke would have 12 carries. And then people are talking about, well, Zeke is not the same player. Well, damn, you wouldn't be the same player either if all you got was 12 carries and every time you seem like you're getting it going, they stop giving you the ball. Yeah. And I think the Cowboys have done that way too often. I think they're leaning on Dak Prescott way too often, and he wasn't playing great football before he got injured. Cooper Rush, then he got in there, and this Houston guy, now he's this big-time receiver because he's one of the only guys they have, and now you're trying to force-feed the ball to him. I mean, it's like they have no weapons on the outside. To be honest with you, Eddie, and I'm going to be honest, and you know how much of an optimist I am. You're talking to the biggest optimist in the world right here, and I don't see it with the Cowboys. I see 6-11, bro. And I hate to say that. I see 6-11. Michael Parsons, didn't surprise me, a beast. Hey, check this out. And I told my cousin, we were texting during the game. He's a big-time Cowboys fan, too. My cousin Chris, what's up, Dumo? Gonna put you out there, man. And big-time Cowboys fan. And he was hurt after the game. I said, cuz, I'm going to tell you right now. I told you before the game, this is not the Cowboys season. Now, granted, if they go off and win 2-3 in a row and then you get Dak back, I hear reports now that he may come back within 4 weeks. Of course, Jerry Jones is very optimistic after the surgery. Now he may come back in 4 weeks. It depends. If they can hold down the fort, you got to remember, we have Cincinnati next week. Could easily be 2-2. You think Cincinnati want to go 0-2 after what they did against Pittsburgh? So you have Cincinnati, even though I think you're playing at home. You think Joe Burrow is going to throw 5 interceptions, or you think he's going to be the cause of 5 turnovers again? Come on now. So the Cowboys had their work cut out for him, and Michael Parsons can't do it all by himself. No. Defensive line, I've been saying this for 3 years. No beef up front. I mean, they just get pushed around. No kind of resistance at the line. So I see 6-11, bro. To tell you the truth.
And even though the running game was successful, having some success, you could say, with 5 yards to carry, I clearly could see that Tampa Bay was more playing against the pass and just going to live with the fact that Ezekiel Elliott is not going to be able to beat you. Pollard's not going to be able to beat you as long as they could shut down that passing game.
You know what else they were doing?
The greatest quarterback of all time was going to score enough points to get out of there with a dub.
Well, yeah. Well, I'll talk about Tom Brady to go here in a second. But you know what else they were thinking too? They knew the MO of the Dallas Cowboys. They knew no matter what success the Cowboys were having with the run game, they knew Kellen Moore and those guys and Mike McCarthy, they knew they were going to get nervous and they knew they were going to get tight after they were playing from a deficit, and they knew that they were not going to stick with that run game. I just think the offensive linemen, and like I said last week, you have a new offensive line. I think you get them involved more when you establish the run early. I think Tyler Smith did okay, actually, all things being considered. But the Cowboys, Eddie, not to harp too much about the Cowboys because I really just don't see it this season. Now, again, if they run off a few in a row and they look like they're in the mix, of course I'll change my tune. But I have to see it, though. I have to see it. I'm just not going to say it just because it's my team. Right now, I don't see it.
For me, the Cowboys for too long – they used to be the team that would try to make the biggest splash just because it was a big splash. Now they've gone almost a little bit too conservative because I feel like they need to go out. If you're a team that's in a championship window, which they clearly feel like and think that they are, then you need to go out and you need to aggressively pursue the players that will fill and mask or totally erase your biggest deficiencies on the field.
Right.
We've seen
teams
like the Rams do that, right. And then don shirts that say F them picks because they didn't need the picks. They needed the players to fill the holes now. And the Cowboys seem to have this, get their cake and eat it too mentality where they hope that they can get these bottom of the barrel guys to come in
and they can coach rejuvenate
their career and while still keeping these premier picks instead of getting on the phone and calling to Houston, Texas and going after a Lermy Tensil. Instead of getting on the phone and saying, hey, Dak's going to be back in 8 weeks. We'll do what we got to do to get somebody in here who can win us some games. It doesn't have to be Jimmy Garoppolo where it's going to cost you a premium pick, but go get somebody who can do something.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing with Jerry Jones, and that's why they're in this predicament right now. Again, for some of the decisions he's made, obviously, financially.
To me, the Lermy Tunsil thing's a no-brainer. They are the team right now, I think, in the league right now who would benefit the most day one when he walks in the door. It's like a totally new offensive line. He's going to be rejuvenated because he's going from a loser to a winner. I thought he was a big part, or I think he's a big part of the evaluation of Davis Mills, and he could still be a big part of the future. We know how tackles age really, really well. But with all the picks that they have, you know, and the opportunities they're going to have to add young tackles and where they are in the rebuilding stage, and his contract, which it's not ridiculous, but it's big. It would make sense. That's a player that you trade. Hey, you trade while the value is still high.
Yeah.
And you trade it to a team that has a need. That way their need is high. And that need and that value together means you're going to get maximum return for a guy like Laremy Tunsil. And Laremy Tunsil, I remember when he came over here to Houston, immediately the offensive line looked different. They were able to run different types of run plays. The left tackles getting out in front, blocking at the second level. Again, this is like a totally different offensive line just because of him.
Yeah.
And the Cowboys so desperately need a guy like
one thing?
Injected into their offensive line.
I would definitely take Laremy Tunsil.
But you're just going to have to part with the premium pick.
I'll tell you this before we transition to the Texans, and then we can talk about some of these other games. But, hey, we still have some. So y'all hang tight. We're going to break down some games and some players and talk about some things that happened over the weekend and look forward to some games this upcoming weekend, of course. But I'll say this before we move on about the Texans. As far as Cowboys, I can't put that on Mike McCarthy. Again, I think Jerry Jones, as much as I love Jerry Jones, I think he gets some of these players, and I think he has this false hope a lot of times that, and not saying that he's not a good evaluator of talent, because they have been doing pretty well over the last few years, and he's kind of pretty much let other people make the call on certain picks and things like that. But I think he gets sometimes, if he just signs a receiver, no matter who it is, like Houston, so to speak, and he see him make a couple of plays in practice or something like that, then all of a sudden he thinks that that's somebody that's going to be a juggernaut on their team, or that they don't need anyone. They don't need any of that extra help like you're talking about. I even heard somebody, I told my cousin, I said, before we move on, I told my cousin, I say, hey, so what do you think about Antonio Brown at this point then? Like, if Dak wouldn't have got hurt and just said they would have lost that game, but the receivers and everything still look bad, I said, what do you think about Antonio Brown? He was like, hell no, I'd rather have T.O. than Antonio Brown. I'm just saying.
Couldn't handle it. I don't know if he would survive an Antonio Brown disaster. Like, if he comes in.
I don't even think Antonio Brown wants to go play for the Cowboys right now. But no, I'm just saying that. But nah, Antonio Brown, that ship has sailed with Antonio Brown in the NFL, in my opinion. But I was, at some point when I was watching some of these receivers, saying to myself, Antonio Brown is in great shape. Hey, I'm not saying it. Jerry, I'm not saying you don't entertain that. But, of course, if that was T.O. and, when Dak got hurt, T.O. would be saying, that's my quarterback. That's my quarterback. But, hey, the Texans, man, 2020, you're talking about now, we talked about UT losing that game in a moral victory. I was disappointed in the Texans. Man, I'll be honest, man, and I'm not a Texans fan, but I want to see Lovie Smith succeed. I was saying to myself, the Texans have this game. And then, man, when I tell you it just evaporated in that fourth quarter like that, man, that was disappointing.
Yeah, Texans take a 17-point lead into the fourth quarter, and you could tell the momentum shift was on the Davis Mills fumble, which was a very close play.
Yeah. I
was surprised that replay didn't look at that closer or go longer with it. I mean, from where the camera angle that we had watching the TV, it was bang where the elbow was down before the ball came out, but clearly that was where the momentum shift after an Indy field goal that made it a 2-possession ball game, 14 points. They were able to go down and get a quick touchdown, leaving about 6 minutes on the board, and Indy's feeling good about where they're at with it only being a 1-score ball game. The offense, and I don't know if it's the team as a whole, but they fizzled out late in the game. They ran out of gas. The defense clearly ran out of gas. They were completely gassed in the fourth quarter. You could tell when Jonathan Taylor was gashing them for
they kept pounding
8, 9, 10 yards, and it was just like the first guy could not bring him down.
Yeah.
And it
the
was
Colts offensive line is very good.
And blowing a 17-point fourth quarter lead is not good, although they did do a lot of good things in the first half. But to me, playing for the tie is just gutless. Absolutely gutless.
I totally agree.
It's just not something that I expect an NFL head coach to do. We've actually seen Frank Reich.
He's from the old school
building, or was it in Indianapolis? I can't remember. But against the Texans, go for a fourth down, deep in his own territory, late in overtime. They knew they weren't going to get the football back, but it's like, hey, we're going for the win. And if we don't get this 4th down and 3 and we lose, it was a 4th down and 3 that time. Texans would have faced, I believe, a 4th down and 3 as well. then so be it. We lose. But Lovie Smith instead played for the tie. They got the tie. And it just makes me wonder if this organization has, put their best foot forward in the sense like, hey, we're going to go out and try to win ball games. We know last year they didn't really care about winning ball games.
Set the tone for the
I'm
season
not so
right there.
sure if they've moved on from that just yet, or if they're still looking down the road like, hey, we punt on this one, we tie.
Yeah, playing conservative. And we play not to.
If we don't win, who cares? Because we still got all these picks. We'll be drafting high, and they're still looking forward to the future in that sense instead of saying, hey, look at what we were able to put together in the first half. Look at how the defense was containing Taylor as much as he could be contained. A guy like him really doesn't get contained, but they bottled him up pretty well in the first half. He didn't hurt them. They stopped him short of a couple first downs and were able to get the football back. You felt like Davis Mills made some decent throws to O.J. Howard to get 2 touchdowns for the new Texan tight end. But what concerns me the most with Davis Mills, and what concerns me most with the Texans, is Davis Mills. I think the conditioning, you're going to see, it doesn't surprise me. You see some NFL teams slope off, at late in games early in the season, and it's no surprise to me.
I thought he looked good early
especially
on.
I'm talking about late in the game.
Yeah, I know,
they start to fade.
Right, I say early. Yeah,
especially in a place like Houston where they do taper back some of the conditioning because of the heat during training camp.
Right.
They can really condition themselves a little bit better as it starts to cool off a little bit more. I think that they may be able to improve in that sense. But their biggest concern is the quarterback. And Davis Mills, he's been too inaccurate on deep balls. And really, what concerns me the absolute most about him is that in that game, he made some of the easiest throws look difficult.
He did.
There was a third down play, I believe, to Chris Conley, where instead of throwing him and hitting him in the numbers, he throws it below the knees. Yeah, maybe Chris Conley should have caught that. But he's trying to stay on his feet so he can go and get a first down. He can't dive to the ground and catch that ball. Davis Mills has to make that easy throw look like an easy throw. And there were several throws that were easy throws that did not look easy and look labored coming from Davis Mills. And that's something that he's going to have to clean up if he wants to have any success in this league.
In the NFL. Right. And you know what? And I think across the board, you saw a lot of quarterbacks do that for the most part. And I think a lot of that goes into the fact when these guys are not actually playing these games in preseason and you have one less game. And so it's a lot of sloppiness with the offenses, with a lot of the offenses early in the season. I thought early on Davis Mills, I said he looks the part. I never thought his arm strength was like A1 arm strength. I mean, we talk about arm strength. Talk about Tom Brady. We were talking about Tom Brady. The biggest takeaway I took from that game with Tom Brady is at 45, the zip he still has on the football. And, he didn't have a great game, but I said, that guy at 45 can still throw it like that. Davis Mills, he doesn't have a cannon for an arm, and I do know these plays you're talking about. I think early on, though, man, he really kept his team in it and made some good plays. He looked like he could be the guy. Then late, of course, he faltered. And, of course, if they lose a bunch of games and they get one of the top 2 or 3 picks, they're going to take a quarterback
all
with the first
that goes
pick.
into the evaluation, and I felt like, he did come out a little bit jittery. Okay, that's to be expected for a guy making, his first opening day start.
Right.
But he also concerned me with his lack of pocket presence. There was too many times where he was taking sacks where if he had just stepped up in the pocket, just a step,
just
a little bit, he would be able to avoid that sack. Or where he's breaking towards the line of scrimmage because there's nobody open down the field and not sensing that there's somebody right there, on his side, and he could have thrown the football away. Instead, he takes a 3-4 yard sack in a situation where the Texans couldn't have it.
Yeah.
These are the types of things. And then also, as the game became more and more of a pressure cooker, then his decision making seemed like it started to be a little bit more and more delayed. He was thinking a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And that'll cause him to take more sacks. And it's just not what you want to see from a guy who's supposed to be progressing and taking that next step forward towards being a quote-unquote franchise quarterback.
Right. And, of course, that's your team. Now, I was turning back from that game, and, of course, I was watching, was it the Saints? The Saints come back on the Falcons. So I was watching both of those games at the time, and I will say this. Like you're saying, okay, he started out good, and long-term, you want him to learn from some of these mistakes that happened in the fourth quarter. And I think he'll do that as he gains more experience. Again, he's a smart quarterback, so I think, and again, they have to help him with the run game as well and really lean on Damian Pierce more. You had Burkhead in there. You had him in there doing some things on third down, and he's the guy that you really featured more than anything. But I think you helped Davis Mills out, too.
Which really makes no sense.
That
was going to be the next thing on the hit list for the Texans, and what seemed concerning was the complete lack of utilization of Dameon Pierce, a guy who plays 20% of the snaps. Mm-hmm. I don't care if he played any of the snaps. When you got down to that third down and one, it was late in the game where they had that first down and they ended up punting it and settling for the tie. Dameon Pierce has to be running that football because Rex Burkhead isn't scaring anybody running the football, and clearly he doesn't have what it takes to grind out, those hard yards that Dameon Pierce has shown by his ability to run through tackles, that he can get those plays. I'm thinking the whole like late in the second quarter, in the third quarter, I'm thinking, is this guy in the doghouse? Like, is he hurt? What's going on with Dameon Pierce? Why is he not playing? Maybe they have a plan. When I turned back over,
I was saying the same thing.
But I don't understand. That seems like one of those things where you're almost willfully losing by not putting your best players out there in the most important situations in the football game. And that leads to my point, or adds to my point I was making earlier. How bad do the Houston Texans really want to win this season?
Well, see, and again with Lovie Smith, and that's what was disappointing.
Because then players catch on that they're not trying to win, they're going to pack up their crap and go home. I'm just telling you right now.
You set the tone.
We saw it last season. A defense that was tenacious,
and that was kind of surprising.
Stopped playing hard because they knew they weren't going to get anything from the offense, and this team wasn't trying to win.
And see, what was surprising with Lovie Smith, the way he had the team playing, clicking on all cylinders early on the defense side of the ball, flying around. I love what I'm seeing from Derek Stingley Jr., Jalen Petrie. I mean, they look like they really were a Lovie Smith-led defense. And then, again, at the end of the game like that, when you have a chance to get that victory after you had already let them come back from a deficit that they shouldn't have come back from, at your home, even though they were predicted to win that game. But again, you have Matty Ice, you have Matt Ryan throwing the ball to Michael Pittman, running the ball with Jonathan Taylor behind that big offensive line, just wore the Texans down. But when you have a chance to win that game or go for the juggernaut, you do that and you send that message to your team, and hopefully that gets them moving forward, believing in themselves. So that was kind of surprising by Lovie Smith. I'm sure, now that was game one for the coaches as well. So I'm sure Lovie would probably learn from that. As the same thing I think will happen with, before we talk about, of course, Mahomes and the Chiefs, Jalen Hurts. Been trying to tell y'all Jalen Hurts is going to be okay. I don't understand what all the hoopla was. Of course, everybody needs to get better. Everyone can improve. But it was never any doubt in my mind that Jalen Hurts, again, it was the Detroit Lions. Kudos to Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions, the way he has them playing. DeAndre Swift is looking like the real deal, looking like the player I thought he would be when he was drafted out of Georgia. He's a big playback. And they don't even have Jameson Williams, their first-round draft pick with Detroit. But I like what Philly was able to do. Yeah. I like what Philly was able to do as far as running the ball. I like what they were able to do, man. And Jalen Hurts was dropping that ball in the breadbasket. And there's never any doubt in my mind, all this talent. A.J. Brown, he's open right now. He's always open. A.J. Brown is always open, 10 for 155. Now you have that added weapon for Jalen Hurts. I'm telling y'all, Jalen Hurts, who led his team to the playoffs last year, but for some reason he was the only question mark for the Philadelphia Eagles when I've been saying he's their franchise quarterback. What are you all looking at? Jalen Hurts is going to be just fine, dual threat, and he's going to even get better as a passer. And they played against a formidable opponent in Detroit, believe it or not.
Yeah, I watched Hard Knocks this year. You could tell Detroit's going to be a lot better, and they showed it in that football game as they start to gel and they start to become a true Dan Campbell football team. I think he's a decent coach. I don't know if he's going to be good enough to stick around for a real long time there, but if they continue to show the improvement that they've shown throughout the preseason and throughout week one, then I think they're going to be fine. Now with Jalen Hurts,
Aiden Hutchinson.
With Jalen Hurts, I don't think it was necessarily the talent that concerned people about him being the guy, and it wasn't just the decision making. Early on, quarterbacks that have the safety net of having the ability to lose their legs tend to use them more than maybe they need to or they should, and we'll see that as the years progress with the ones that are going to go through that growth to become that guy. They start to use their legs less and less, and they only pop them when they need them. I think about Russell Wilson and how much he used to use his legs, and now you look right. How he does, how he uses them now. And go ahead.
No. I mean that's a great point, and that's to my point too. Though with me saying, of course, I knew that he would evolve as a passer. I mean, he has to get more accurate, which he showed that he's worked on. And the reason I've always said that I still thought he was going to be a franchise quarterback because, for one, I watch him play, and I saw what he could do, how he could be the best player on the field because he has that ability to use his legs. And if he got more weapons, now you have Devontae Smith, you have A.J. Brown, you have a healthy running back in the backfield. So now I think with his work habits and what he's able to do in the offseason, with him wanting to be great, I just think he has all the intangibles as far as leadership qualities. I think he can make every throw. I mean, the guy did play under Lincoln Riley. Kudos to USC doing a great job down there too. So we didn't talk about them, but we'll talk about them in the weeks to come. But I think Jalen Hurts is going to continue to improve. Now he has the weapons around him, and Philly is a team to be reckoned with. Real quick before we move on, Eddie.
Well, yeah, with Jalen Hurts, so what I wanted to mention about the doubt that was out there about Jalen, it wasn't just about Jalen. It was about the ability of him to still go through the growth that he needs to go through the coaching changes. Mm-hmm. Where a lot of young quarterbacks, they struggle, and a lot of new regimes will come in and they'll just trade a guy and move on.
Yeah.
Okay, so his growth doesn't have to stop here, but it's going to stop with us because we're going to bring our guy in. And you got to give credit to Nick Sirianni.
Right.
You got to give credit,
I agree with that.
Credit to the entire front office and credit to the coaching staff for saying, hey, we are going to go with this kid because we're going to be able to get out of him what these other, other coaches haven't been able to get out of him just yet.
Well, see, and that leads me to what I'm saying as far as
the leadership and stuff, the skill set and all that, that's always been there. And we've seen that going all the way back to Alabama. The toughness.
Well, they saw something in him, too, for them to make that statement early on and commit to him. But that's just to my point. I guess my point is, okay, this is a guy that led them to the Super Bowl, and even though they had all these additions, of course the quarterback is going to be the main focal point. And like I said, everyone can improve. Every quarterback can improve. I've never said that Jalen Hurts was a finished product, but it never was a question in my mind that he was their franchise quarterback moving forward. That's all I'm saying. Whereas in most people's eyes, and a lot of people's eyes, they were like, well, I don't know about Jalen Hurts yet. I'm like, I can see it. And I can see that he's going to have the evolution, and I can see all this transpiring. Now, again, that's one game, and I'm not saying he's going to go out there and kill it every game and not throw an interception here and make mistakes, but that's every quarterback. But I'm just saying, I never had any doubt in my mind that he was their franchise quarterback for the next 10 years. Now you add that weaponry around him. Wow, with that defense, I like what Saquon was able to do with the Giants, even though they didn't do nothing in the first half. Brian Dable got them going in the second half. Saquon, who I said was about a month ago, Dable said he was going to use him more, like use him out of the backfield, use him more in the pass game, caught like 6 passes. Saquon, when he's healthy, you have to remember, Eddie, he's 2 years removed from that ACL. So I think last season it was an ankle. I think that ankle healed up just fine. But now he's 2 years removed from that ACL. It was never. If Saquon is healthy, Saquon is going to ball out. Now I know the offensive line was a concern, but Saquon, in my opinion, if he's healthy, is probably the top back in the game, bro. I'm talking about is what he can give you just in the passing game and the run game. That's the explosion he gives you. A 68-yard touchdown, a 33-yard scamper. That's the explosion that Saquon Barkley gives you. And I'm glad to see him back, scored on that 2-point conversion. That's what you do. You see what Brian Dable did? Went forward, went for the juggler right there on that 2-point conversion. And again, but you had the players to make it happen in Saquon Barkley.
Now, speaking of explosion, real quick before we talk about the Broncos and the Seahawks.
Talk about
when we talk about explosion, both the Chiefs and the Bills, the elite in the AFC, came out and showed week 1 why they are the elite in the AFC. And I think both of them are on another collision course to meet in the AFC Championship. Even though last year it wasn't the AFC Championship where they saw each other, it was the divisional round. Mm-hmm. But these are hands down the 2 best teams in the AFC. Chiefs go out there, jump on a Cardinals team, all over a Cardinals team, and the Bills, took the Super Bowl champion out to the woodshed. So just a couple tidbits on those two. Both those quarterbacks. Let me say something about that real quick. Both those quarterbacks looked outstanding.
Please let me go right there real quick. Yeah. Before we talk about your team, but not your team, about the game last night, and of course I want to get your take on the Bills and the way they looked against the Rams this past Thursday night to open the season, of course. But Patrick Mahomes, and like everyone was talking about, Tyreek Hill, yes, Tyreek Hill is going to be a major loss. Love what they were able to do in Miami. Tua got that victory. Great job by Tua. Still throwing the ball short, but you have these players now that can make plays. I'm sure eventually Mike McDaniel will find a way to push the ball downfield. But you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle who can do things after the catch, so you can utilize them in certain ways, to get the ball out of Tua's hands quickly. So they were able to get that victory over offensive, just an offensive putrid team in the Patriots. But the the Bills or the Chiefs. Hey, Patrick Mahomes. I was saying about Tyreek Hill. Hey, now we talking about evolving as a quarterback. As great as Patrick Mahomes is, that game, I watched that entire game, bro. And, of course, Kyler Murray, they barely could move the ball. Kingsbury, no running game, no DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think he completed over two passes, over 15 yards. So the Chiefs on defense, too, were flying around. Steve Spagnuolo, he has these guys flying around on the defense side of the ball. I think that loss last year against Cincinnati in that championship game, we talking about evolution as a quarterback. You look at Patrick Mahomes, we look at how great he's already been and how great he is. He has stepped his game up even more now because it was never surprising to me that if you get Juju Smith-Schuster, you get Sky Moore, who's a speedster. Now you can use him in the return game as well as you saw him make some plays. Now he's spreading the ball around to everybody. Travis Kelce haven't lost a step, still getting downfield, still has the wiggle.
Was their use of the
they're
running
using
backs.
Everybody. And the running backs look good.
They used 3 running backs in that game. McKinnon, of course, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who showed that great. He's still the top dog.
That's why they drafted him number 1
in that offense as far as the running backs go, and then the 7th round pick Pacheco, which was a pleasant surprise. So they are doing
defense side of the ball.
What the Chiefs have done ever since Andy Reid got there. They're drafting guys who other people are passing on, and then they're fitting them into their system. And if you look at what they've heard all offseason long, I mean, what's been the talk about the Chiefs? Are they still the Chiefs without Tyreek Hill? Can this offense perform the way they've performed in the past without Tyreek Hill? Can they still score the points? Do they still have the big playability? I think they wanted to come out week 1 clearly
and show that.
And show that to the entire league that when you come out here to Arrowhead or when we come to your place, you're going to have a juggernaut.
We're going to throw the ball around the field. And the thing about it, again, and now even though, okay, they're going to eventually take those shots deep downfield as well. But Patrick Mahomes, what he's doing now, he's taking what the defense gives him. And now he has more weapons. Now you can't key in on Tyreek Hill. You have Juju Smith-Schuster, who's healthy. Again, you have Sky Moore. You have the other new addition. But then they're even using another tight end to go along with Kelce that's almost like a wide receiver. So the number 88.
Yes.
The guy. So and then you accompany that with the scheme and the play calling of Andy Reid and your boy Eric Bieniemy. Hey man, the Chiefs are right there. Chargers beat the Raiders. I love what Justin Herbert is doing. Of course, y'all know the Chargers are my team in the AFC. Got family ties there. My cousin Chris is the wide receivers coach. I've said that before on the show. And those receivers are looking good. The Chargers, Khalil Mack, they look good out the gates. You have Khalil Mack across from Bosa. Now Khalil Mack is freed up because he's playing with more talent. J.C. Jackson is not even there yet. You have Asante Samuel balling. Of course, you had Devontae Adams with the Raiders catching 10 passes, but he was pretty much their only weapon. So the Chargers look good on both sides of the ball. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do moving forward, like against the Chiefs this week. That's just why I brought them up real quick. But we don't really have time to break down every team. But I love what I'm seeing from the Chargers thus far in that first game. Hey, man, on both sides of the ball. So Justin Herbert, the receivers, the running game, the defense, they got out the gates very strong. So now we see them against the Chiefs this week, so we'll see what happens. But what's your take on, of course, the Packs and the Vikes? We could talk about that. No receivers over there for Green Bay as of yet. But the Seahawks in Denver, man, Russell Wilson going back to Seattle. What's your take on that, Eddie?
Yeah, real quick to touch on the Pack and the Vikes.
Okay.
I was just real quick. I was just a little bit surprised about the ineptitude of the Packers offense, and a little bit surprised by just how clean Kirk Cousins looked.
Yeah.
And comfortable. But when you think
about the new head coach,
think about what they've put.
Kevin O'Donnell.
Yeah, and
from
you know where he came from. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And what type of offense, bringing
Absolutely.
that West Coast out
Justin
there.
Jefferson went crazy.
We know. We know that Cousins is comfortable on the West Coast because of his experience with Kubiak and with Shanahan and the likes of such. So it's a match made in heaven. And then on top of that, you've got the still fantastic development of Justin Jefferson to elite. He's already an elite receiver, but there's no doubt about it. Like, the first person you have to stop whenever you stop that offense, it used to be Dalvin Cook. To me, it's Justin Jefferson now. Cook, you could tell that they're going to, he's still going to be a force to be reckoned with. Trust me. Mm-hmm. But I think they're because of what they can do in the passing game now, and they don't necessarily have to throw it deep all the time. Mm-hmm. What they can do in the passing game allows them to not lean so heavily on Cook like they used to in the past. And you know how his injury history is. You give him too many carries, you might end up having to play late in the season without him. Mm-hmm. They don't want to go. They don't want to go through that, obviously. So the more they can use Justin Jefferson in that passing game, Adam Thielen, the better off they're going to be, and the healthier Dalvin Cook is going to be, so he can still be the electric weapon that he is. It was an impressive showing from the Vikings, in my opinion.
I agree.
And all of a sudden now, it has
you question. Smith, like, you guys let me go?
Is there an actual?
This is why I want to come over here and play, so I can play you all
is there an
twice
actual
a year.
Changing of the tide in the AFC? I mean, I'm sorry, the NFC.
Yeah,
North,
you know the pack.
The first piece away from the Packs has moved on. You know, can the Packers do? They're essentially trying to do what the Chiefs did. They're trying to, get over losing their number one target, and clearly the Chiefs are going to be a lot better off than the Packers are.
Absolutely. I think the Chiefs just had more overall talent. I think they have a better play call over there, and they have a better scheme over there for Patrick Mahomes. And Patrick Mahomes, hey, man, the Chiefs are not now. As far as this upcoming weekend is going to be interesting to see. I'm going to go with the Chargers because I'm rolling with my cuz. I want the Chargers to win. I want the Chargers to win that game. But it's going to be a good game, and it's going to be a shootout, and both teams are very formidable. But, again, those are two juggernauts in the AFC that's going to be right up there for Super Bowl contention, along with the Buffalo Bills who dominated the Rams in that first game. Josh Allen right now is probably the leader in the clubhouse for MVP, but that was just an all-around domination. Now, we can say that it was a hangover, Super Bowl hangover. I don't think the Rams are going to be the same team without some of the players that they've lost as well, but even though they're still going to be good, but the Bills, I mean, what they're doing, they're just dominant across the board on the defensive side of the ball. You look at Von Miller, I said last week, that was a difference right there. Von Miller is on the other side right now, and you saw the impact that he had in that game and what he does not only physically for that team, getting that team over the hump, some timely sacks, getting pressure on the quarterback, opening up things for Gregory Rousseau over there on the other side, and for Ed Oliver and for some of these other players. I mean, these players, some of those other defensive players had a great game because of the presence of Von Miller. But what it does mentally, it really makes you think that you're a team that really can now contend. You really can contend for a Super Bowl now and really get through that juggernaut of an AFC as far as the playoffs is concerned. And maybe this guy that we have on the defense side of the ball will be the guy that probably can get to Patrick Mahomes, even though Patrick Mahomes is still making plays with his legs and doing this and that. Or I can get to Justin Herbert. Or I can get to, look at what Lamar Jackson did. He betted on himself. And even though they didn't have a great game, but he proved that, hey, I can make the deep ball.
Well, he made some throws. They were not able to run the football the way they would.
J.K. Dobbins is not back
the way
either.
They would have liked to run the football, and,
right?
And without J.K. Dobbins, and so they were forced to lean on the arm of Lamar Jackson. He was forced to throw, and I think he did a good job of that. Now, speaking of competing in the AFC, a team that went out and spent $250 million. On a quarterback to try to be one of those teams that competes in the AFC West and in the AFC, the Denver Broncos, They lose their first game to, the former team of their quarterback, Russell Wilson, to the Seattle Seahawks. Mm-hmm. Geno Smith played well.
He played great.
He played well. I mean, in that situation, you could say for a guy like, when the name Geno Smith is attached to the statement, you can say Geno Smith played great. Because for Geno Smith, he played great. Yeah. But I hope he can play better if they're going to be a team that wants to contend for any type of playoff position. Mm-hmm. Clearly, Denver did not have their best game. I mean, when you fumble in 2 goal-to-go situations,
inside the 10-yard line,
14 points off the board. Hell, inside the 1.
Yeah,
they're
2 fumbles.
Yeah, and that were recovered both
4 possessions inside the red zone where they didn't score.
And so that was the difference.
Penalties all over the place.
That was the difference in the ball game. Now, the reason why this is a big story, or this game is getting talked about so much today, is because Nathaniel Hackett, with all 3 timeouts, almost a minute left. What was it, like 50 seconds?
I was looking at the screen like, what is he doing?
It was over a minute left on the clock with all 3 timeouts. 4th down and 5.
And he's just letting the clock tick.
From the 46, and they let all 40 seconds of the play clock tick off, and they call time out to set up a 64-yard field goal, which would have tied the NFL record. Now, I've gone back and forth thinking about this, putting myself in Hackett's position.
Okay.
How did you feel about the call? Do you agree, disagree?
Disagree.
It's easy to, I've gone back and forth. I disagree with you because you got all 3 timeouts in over a minute, and you've got Russell Wilson. Yeah, so if you don't get it, you can still stop them and hopefully maybe get an opportunity to get the ball back. And then I try to look at the flip side of the coin, and I'm like, okay, you've got these kickers. Some of them are weapons. McManus, he's one of those guys with a really big leg.
They cut your boy from Indianapolis today for losing the game.
Rodrigo Blankenship. That was a bad miss by him.
Yeah, it was.
But in pregame, Greg. I mean, you've been a part of the process. You've played in football at a higher level. Mm-hmm. Every kicker before the game goes out and they test their distance and they tell a coach, "Hey, this is the furthest that I'm comfortable with. This is where I'm for sure from, and then this is the furthest I can kick it here today with the way the wind is." And they established that it was going to be the 46-yard line. About a 63, 64-yard field goal would be the longest that McManus could have. And what Thacker decided to do was like, "Hey, I'm going to go for the win right now." The only problem is it's such a low percentage,
extremely low,
extremely low. So if they make it, he's a hero.
Right.
But if they miss
That's what I was gonna say.
It's going to be overly scrutinized for the entire week until they get on the field next week, which just so happens to be against your Houston Texans.
Okay.
That's going to be a game that we're going to get to see, right here in town.
Here. Well, it's going to be 2 teams that's very, very
eager for a win.
The same thing I was saying about Cincinnati after losing to Pittsburgh. Congrats to Pittsburgh. Hope T.J. Watt is okay, but congrats to Tomlin, Pittsburgh, for doing their thing in that first game.
Now, I will give credit to the coach for coming back and saying that he wished he had made a.
But let me tell you about Hackett right there, man. Now, for one, I disagree with the call. I think you have a quarterback.
He said he should have made a different call. Should have went for it.
He should have went for it. Hindsight is 20/20, and it was 4th and 5 actually. But you see how he tried to throw that. I thought on 4th and 6. No, it wasn't 4th and 6, bro. It was 4th and 5. It wasn't 4th and 6. See, but that's his way of trying to deflate how trying to minimize it or trying to embellish on the lack of a call that he should have made or the lack of astuteness that he should have had at that situation. Or just, in my opinion, man, you have a $250 million quarterback right there, Hall of Fame quarterback. You ride or die with him right there.
Look, and you got all the
weaponry
that you needed. Now,
and he's hot.
It makes me wonder, like, if you look. Go ahead. You makes me. It makes me wonder. The running back, Javonte Williams. Why 2 plays in a row he elects not to go out of bounds to stop the clock.
Right.
I mean, even though they got all these timeouts, they weren't using them. Now, had there been even more time on the clock, had he gone out of bounds and they were able to think about some of those plays that they wanted to call a little bit longer, then I think it could have changed the scenario a little bit to where Nathaniel Hackett wouldn't have been put in that position that he was with that 4th and 5. But it's not like this. What? You look at the score real quick. You look at the score, 16 points for the offense. You think, they really hadn't done much that game. That's not entirely true. Russell Wilson was moving the ball through the air very well.
He threw for 340.
And they had converted several 3rd downs.
But when you're
like I said, they had 16 points, but they should have had 30.
Right, they should have had 30. When you're not scoring inside the red zone, you're fumbling. The running backs are fumbling at the 1-yard line. And you're giving the ball, and you're fumbling, and you're giving the ball back up. You're not coming away with points. You go into the red zone, 3 or 4 times. You don't put up any points. And even in that situation, I know this is his first game as a coach, but in that situation right there, you have to know, if I was the head coach in that situation, I would have to know that a 64-yard field goal, I mean, now, since the guy from the Saints who had the half of the foot or whatever, who kicked that 63-yard field goal years ago, and that held for I don't know how long. And then you had Jason Elam, and you had a few guys that's broken that record since then. Now these people think that they can just come in and the 63-yard field goal is like a 30-yard field goal. Yeah. The thing about it is you're not kicking in Denver, so you're not kicking with that high altitude.
That's the biggest thing, too. If it's in Denver, it's a different story as well.
Yeah.
The percentage goes up a little bit, not more than the possibility of them converting that 4th down, but it goes up at least some to where you feel a little bit better.
But even that, you got to know how to utilize your timeouts in that situation to where you can have a couple of more plays to get the ball downfield and work your offense and do some things. Now you put yourself in a predicament when you let the clock run down like you do, and then now you're You call timeout at the end of the play clock. I mean, I don't care if it's your first game or not. You should know that you have to manage the clock better than that. And again, I think he regrets. I know he got up there and he tried to save face in the interview where I thought it was 4th and 6 and I thought our chances were better kicking a 64-yard field goal. That's a bunch of baloney. But hey, it is what it is. I think now they came out and booed Russell Wilson. I didn't agree with that. But at the same time, that's what happens. I mean, this is the NFL. These are fans. They're called fans. It's short for fanatics. And I like the way Russell Wilson handled it, though. After the game, he handled it with class. He talked about, I don't know what was going on in the locker room. Yeah, he forced his way out of Seattle, but he wanted more power, just like some of these other quarterbacks do, and didn't get it. Didn't think he was getting the offensive line help. We know Geno Smith played out of his mind last night. I think some of these players probably played over their head, even on the defense side of the ball, just because Russell Wilson was back in town. We'll see if Pete Carroll, we know how great of a coach he is. He'll be 71 next week. He still looks like he's running around out there like he's 51. But we'll see what happens moving forward with Geno Smith, and if that game was a one-off and the return of Russell Wilson just had them playing at a level that they normally can't get to. We shall see who the real Seattle Seahawks are. But I love what Geno Smith was able to do. He's learned from a number of quarterbacks, Russell Wilson being one of them. But I like the way Russell Wilson handled himself after the game when they asked him about that. Now, of course, he forced his way out, and he did that. But he's the guy that led them to 2 Super Bowls, won a Super Bowl, should have won a second Super Bowl, and was nothing but class personified while he was in Seattle, doing things in the community. And I like the way he deflected the question. Well, not so much deflected it. He attacked it head on by saying he talked about all the good times that he had in Seattle and all the players that he still keep in contact with. And at the same time, he didn't disrespect the team he's on now. He's just saying now I'm with a different team. But, hey, he took it all in stride, man. I like the way Russell Wilson handled that. But
now, before we go, I got one question for you and one more game we'll talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Was there anything that stood out to you this weekend, like biggest surprise? Like, is there some – good or bad? What was your biggest surprise takeaway from watching football this weekend?
The biggest surprise? Well, you know what I was surprised? I was surprised to see the Bears. I was in a rain monsoon, of course. Trey Lance out now. Again, it was a rain monsoon, but the San Francisco 49ers, surprised to see them get off to an 0-1 start. You talked about Eberflus, and the thing about Eberflus, what was different in that second half? Now, again, Justin Fields didn't play good in the first half. The second half, he made some plays when it counted, got his team in position, got his team in the right play sets and right formations and right play calls, and that comes with experience. So even though it was a rain monsoon and both teams had to deal with it, he handled it better than Trey Lance in the second half in the waning moments of that game, and he made some plays down the stretch, whereas it wasn't the case for Trey Lance. And we know we have Jimmy Garoppolo looking over his shoulder. I don't know if that's a good thing for him, but he has to strap it on and play ball. Hey, strap on your helmet, strap on the chin strap, just go play ball and act as if no one is behind you, even though we know Jimmy G is right there. Now, of course, when the weather gets better, that will give him a chance to really show more things. Of course, maybe the running game will be what they normally are. But to your point that you were making about Eberflus, what really showed up in the second half was the difference was Shanahan, an experienced San Francisco 49ers team, who a lot of people think can do some things if Trey Lance hit the ground running, but they have the overall talent around him. They had like 12 penalties in that game for almost 100 yards. In the second half, Chicago had 0 penalties, even though they were playing in a rain monsoon. And so for them to get that victory was the biggest surprise to me.
When you look at, if you go back to his days in Indianapolis, him being Matt Eberflus, his defense has played very disciplined ball. They didn't commit a lot of penalties, so he's taking that with him to Chicago, and that's good. And I like that you mentioned that surprise. That was one of my big surprises, but it was on the other end. Just the inability of the 49ers to really get anything going on offense, and especially in the run game, even in the monsoon. Like, this is a team that's been able to go out there and push people around up front, and it just doesn't look like they're having that same success. Now, we know that when you move some pieces around on the offensive line, when you have this zone scheme, and not all these players have blocked in that scheme consistently throughout their career, it takes a while for them to get used to it. Sometimes it takes them zone running games, a couple of games to really get, cohesive and gel enough to where they can start to where you can plug anybody in there from some Joe Blow from Appalachian State all the way up to a first-round pick at running back, and they'll have asses. Now Elijah Mitchell is going to miss some time. He's probably going to be out 6 to 8
that's a big
weeks.
loss right there.
You got to feel a little bit confident from what you've seen in the past out of Jeff Wilson Jr. He usually comes in and is a monster for them. They've got a guy they drafted
gonna be cool, man.
in the third round as well.
Right.
So there's going to be a little bit of the two-headed monster in the backfield, I think, between Wilson Jr. and what's the guy's name they drafted? Trey Hardy or something like that. The backup running back they drafted.
Well, I know they cut Trey Sermon, which they should have.
Yeah, no, Sermon.
He looked bad.
No, the one I'm talking about, he has a hyphenated name, and I can't remember what it is for the life of me. But he's going to get some playing time. This backfield, if San Francisco wants to be good, this backfield is going to need to be dominant, especially with the struggles of Trey Lance, because it's obvious that the guy is coming along very, very slowly.
Yeah, he is.
And
he is.
I don't think
now
that they
Jimmy G
anticipated
looking over his
this.
shoulder.
And look, I think the whole reason why they hadn't traded him, because there's a very real possibility that if he doesn't get going any quicker, they're going to be forced to go back to Jimmy if they want to have a chance to play in the postseason this year. They're going to have to, because he just does not look like he's ready to be the starter for that team. And look, I read an article, Greg, where Shanahan had to go to 15 leaders on the team and implore for them to support Trey as the starter. Teams that we know are players that they know Jimmy Garoppolo has already taken them to a Super Bowl.
Right.
So,
and you know what?
When you got the head coach trying to convince players for the cause to back a guy, that it tells me you're playing a guy that
shouldn't be playing right now.
Either you shouldn't be playing right now, or clearly he doesn't give you the best chance to win. What do coaches always say? He gives us the best chance to win.
Yeah.
This guy, and we're not talking about Joe Flacco. We're still talking about a guy that technically is in the prime of his career in Jimmy Garoppolo.
Right. And I've always spoke highly about Garoppolo, and I always wonder why people were ready to run him out of town. But that's what happens. That's what happens when you draft a guy that high and you see the talent that he has, and you really want him to learn on the fly. Now, granted, with San Francisco, you really don't have that operating room to really let him go through the growing pains and go through the doldrums, so to speak, because you have a team that's ready to contend right now. So what you're hoping is, now that first game, they probably can look at that as kind of fluky because of the weather. Now they'll really see what he's made of when he's actually playing with some good weather and they can run the ball, especially with that zone blocking scheme. I think they'll give him a few games, and if he can become more accurate and do some things, and then, of course, you're going to utilize his legs, of course. But I think they're trying to speed up the process, and they're hoping he hits the ground running, and he didn't really play a lot in college as well. This is his second season, his first year as starter. So they're probably going to have to be patient with him, but you don't want to be losing games. You would rather be patient but win games in the process, even though he may falter, so to speak. You would hope that he's not the cause that you're actually losing. Yeah. So we'll see what happens moving forward with him. We know he has the talent. He just has to put it all together, not make mistakes, be more accurate, and we'll see what happens moving forward.
I think John Lynch and Shanahan both are feeling a lot of pressure from up top, because of what they spent to get this kid.
Yeah, third pick. That's what I'm saying.
First round picks to go up and get this
Absolutely.
guy. We heard Deshaun Watson was just traded for that, and we know what kind of quarterback.
I thought Justin Fields should have been the first quarterback taken.
Yeah, we know what kind of quarterback they is, and this is a guy, like you said, hasn't played a lot of football. So they took a big risk, and now they're probably getting pressure from up top. Like, hey, if you're gonna change the guard, then it needs to happen now. We need to play this kid. We spent too much on him for him not to be playing.
Absolutely.
The problem is he just hasn't gotten it yet.
Yeah,
and with the offensive line not being 100% and not being as good as it's been in the past, or seeming to not be as good as it's been in the past, that leads to the running game not being as good.
Right.
It makes it even that much harder for Trey Lance, so why rush it?
Because that too, and then with Jimmy Garoppolo, of course, you can play a different style. And I think they're hoping what Trey Lance is going to give them, he's going to give them that dual threat that really keeps the defense honest. And then with his powerful arm, if he can become more accurate and make the right decisions, I think they're going to try to keep it simple for him. They're just going to tell him, hey, man, don't beat yourself. Protect the football and take your check downs. Don't try to be Superman, and try to be accurate as possible. And I think they just, they're going to give him a chance to really. Now, we're saying all this about him right now, how he looked in that first game, a couple of games in preseason. Next week, we might be singing a different tune. He may come out there run for almost 100 yards, throw for about 200, and have some, so we shall see. But right now, Jimmy G is lurking.
Haven't seen it in preseason and haven't
seen it.
He
had a couple flashes.
Haven't seen it yet. It's going to have to happen. I mean, I felt like a lot of people thought that maybe he would come right in and be this, Robert Griffin III type of guy, and it just hasn't materialized from him. He doesn't seem to have a complete grasp of the offense.
That's
he's
from a lack
itching
of playing
to run, and when he throws, his mechanics really aren't great, and it shows in his accuracy.
Hey, like I told my cousin Darryl, you should have drafted Justin Fields. But again, I think Trey Lance is going to be great. Now, whether or not he's ready to play right now, the next few weeks will really prove that more than anything. Because Jimmy G, if they feel that their season is slipping away and he's not ready, I think after like the third game, if they're like 1-2 or something like that, you may see Jimmy G. But at the same time, now do you want to really fracture your top quarterback's confidence like that, or do you want to see him go through the growing pains and just ride with whatever he gives you, and the team's success rides on what he does? And I don't know what.
To me, I think the biggest lesson you could teach, or the most important lesson you could teach a quarterback early on in his career, is that this is a results-based business.
That's true.
If you're not putting the results in, hey, it's not like they're going to call him in and cut him. But if he's got to sit down and watch what Jimmy Garoppolo does to win football games, and then emulate that, and then add his athletic prowess on top of that as he gets a grasp on how to win football games and how to run this offense, then that would be spectacular.
That would be ideal.
And then you don't have to worry about killing his confidence, because nobody wants to be benched.
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean, I'm not saying obviously.
But sometimes I'm all about a necessity.
Absolutely, I'm all about being honest. And even when you do something like that, I was going to follow up with this. If that happens, before we get out of here, if that happens to where they have to bench him, and if that is something that may concern you just a bit, but again, I totally agree, you have to make the decision what's best for your team. Hey, call him in there and talk to him. Tell him what's going on. Tell him the deal. Tell him he's not ready yet. Tell him the things he needs to work on. And you talk to him man-to-man, one-on-one. There's nothing wrong with communicating.
And then you pucker up real big and go and kiss Jimmy G's ass, because you need him to come back and play good.
Hey, this is strictly business. Get in there. But again, behind the scenes too, like we talked about, a lot of politics plays into it. So unless he's just terrible, they're going to give him a chance to go through these growing pains, and hopefully they don't lose too many games in the process. That's what's going to matter right there, and them letting him develop.
I need to see them on a dry field, because I need to see this running game. If they can get the running game, if they can get that Kyle Shanahan patented zone running game going, then I think they're going to be
Shanahan didn't use his head the other day with all those penalties to getting his team ready.
Penalties kill you, and then it's tough to play in that kind of weather.
It really is. That's why I say let's give them another week to see. Hey, but before we get out of here, the only team we didn't mention, congratulations to the Commanders. And I'm saying congratulations because, hey, I call it like it is. And even though that's a division, hey, the Cowboys are in last place right now in that division. Every team in that division won. The Commanders beat the Jags. The Jags look better, even though, hey, the first pick, Trayvon Walker got a sack. Travis Etienne was doing some things for the Jags.
James Robinson still has it.
James Robinson. You have your boy, our quarterback over there, your boy Trevor Lawrence, who, I was crazy about coming out of college. He's going to be just fine over there. But the Commanders and Carson Wentz. The Commanders have some wide receivers over there. Curtis Samuel, former Buckeye, and Carson Wentz in that first game for the Commanders looks like the missing piece. Threw for over 300 yards, and we'll see what happens moving forward with them. But the defense was nasty all over the Jags. And who else did we mentioned the Titans?
No, we didn't talk about the Titans. But, of course, they lost to the Giants.
They lost to the Giants.
But, I was a bit impressed with Carson Wentz and his ability to go out there, drive the football down the field, make some good throws up the seam, hitting Dotson in the back of the end zone for that big touchdown late in that game. That was huge.
Yeah.
We've seen good play out of Carson Wentz before. Things just for whatever reason got fractured in Indy, and of course they fell completely apart in Philly. But for whatever reason, these guys like him, these journeyman quarterbacks, they bounce around the league. And if you look at the talent that they have around them, Paul at tight end, Terry McLaurin, Dotson,
Curtis Samuel, Dotson
looking very good, and then Curtis Samuel coming back from injury,
absolutely,
ready to put together an entire campaign. If he does, this could be a three-headed monster. They went out in several three wide receiver sets. That was their primary formation that they ran out of, and that consisted of Dotson, McLaurin, and Samuel. And those three guys together if this game one was indicative of what we're going to see for the rest of the season. There's some points that the Commanders are going to score. I don't know if I'm
still going to get Chase Young back on defense
yet, but I'm just saying, there is some there is something there with that offense. Then of course Antonio Gibson, Then of course you got Antonio Gibson playing very well. There was talk all throughout camp about how the young Robinson kid was going to come in and take his job. Robinson was getting reps with the first team in the preseason. Then he gets shot. So he's going to be out for 4 weeks. But Antonio Gibson says, hold on, not so fast. Look at what I can do, have done in the past for this offense, and look what I'm ready to do this season. Antonio Gibson looked fantastic.
Yes, he did.
And that's a good sign, along with the play of Carson Wentz for the Washington Commanders.
I agree. Hey, so we'll talk about the games this week. We didn't really get the time to really look into a bunch of games this week because, again, week 1 of the NFL, college football going on. There's so much to talk about. Again, hey, Baker Mayfield didn't play bad in this return.
Well, he didn't F him up, I'll tell you that.
He didn't. The Browns leaned on that run game like I thought, and of course, they were able to get that victory, snatched it away from Carolina after they came back and took the lead.
You see why whenever
that was a good game, though. Baker didn't play bad at all.
The Browns just said no.
The Browns.
And you see why.
Here goes Nick Chubb. Here goes Kareem Hunt. Here goes Nick Chubb. Here goes Kareem Hunt. Baker, he played well, but the Browns, like I thought, were going to win that game.
It's just amazing because 2 totally different running styles, between Kareem Hunt and Chubb. You feel like Hunt is a little bit more break to the outside kind of guy, while Chubb, he's like north and south, shot out of a cannon.
Yeah.
And a little bit heavier, a little bit more, not quite a thunder and lightning, so to speak, because I know Chubb isn't like Henry where he's just bowling over people.
Right.
But he is a bigger back with a different style, and then Kareem gets in there with his fresh legs late in games and just dominates.
Absolutely. And then you look at the defense for Myles Garrett, you look at Jacoby Brissett. So for Cleveland to win a game without their starting quarterback, who's out for 11 games, Deshaun Watson, every game that they can win without him, that bodes well for them moving forward as far as their playoff chances again. So, hey, great opening week of NFL football. Again, we have college games this weekend coming up. We have NFL again this weekend coming up, of course. MLB, the Astros are rolling. They're continuing to gel, looking very good. Pitching, Framber Valdez, like we talked about, pitched a gem last night. I mean, he's probably vying for a Cy Young right there.
Many people believe he's passed up Verlander when it comes to the Cy Young resume.
He may have, bro.
With the quality starts. I mean, if you go back to last year, he's already set a major league record for consecutive quality starts, and now last night he tied the single season record.
Yes, he
did.
If
he goes out there in his next start and has a quality start,
that's Cy Young material, man.
Gives up less than 3 earned runs, then
that's Cy Young material.
He will own both records.
There it is.
And that is to me, that's Cy Young.
Absolutely.
In a nutshell, right there. And if you want to tune in tonight, Hunter Brown's going to take the hill for his second major league start. So we'll see if if last Monday was a fluke or whatever they say.
There it is.
From Big Daddy. You remember that?
Yeah.
He's like, I whipped your ass last Monday. I was like, well, last Monday was a fluke.
Hey, man, you listen to the Sports Court, the show where we keep it 100, 1%. Man, they really don't like us, bro. They really don't like us. And they really don't like us. The Sports Court. Legends live and let live.
See y'all next week.